بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So in today's lesson we start a new lecture by Shaykh Ubayd Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, and this section or this chapter is titled Al-Hath على اغتنام الأعمار والأوقات في الأعمال الفاضلة, which translates as the encouragement to take benefit from one's life and one's time in doing virtuous deeds. Right? So basically an encouragement to us all to make use of our lifespan, the time that we have available, in order to accrue, right, to acquire and to build up virtuous deeds, the good deeds, the virtuous deeds. And so before we enter into the topic, I just wanted to mention that this is how a believer, this is how a person of Iman, a person of belief, how he views his life. His life is one of acquisition of good, of doing beneficial, righteous, rectifying deeds, right? Because the deeds, these actions, these virtuous deeds that we are pursuing, that we are trying to accrue, these are deeds which are beneficial and rectifying to the soul, to the heart, and in one's conduct, in one's behavior, and likewise upon the society. This is the nature of the deeds that we are speaking of. These deeds are deeds which are beneficial. They are beneficial. They are rectifying. Right? Within them there is rectification. So when a believer, when he views his life and his time and his pursuits, this is what he pursues. And this then leads to optimism. Optimism means that you have a good, positive outlook. Right? You are looking into the future because you believe in Allah. You believe in, you believe in the last day. You believe in resurrection. You believe in accountability. Basically, This is what the prophets and messengers came with, which is life is meaningful, life is purposeful, there is wisdom in creation, there is a purpose behind creation, there is, justice, there will eventually be absolute justice. And so therefore, a believer in his life, he knows and he prepares, and so he pursues good deeds. He wants to acquire good deeds, and tied to this is optimism. Optimism means to always, to have hope and to think good of what's coming in the future, to think positively, to anticipate that things are going to be good and fine and positive. And this is what drives a believer in his action. It brings about hope, right? Because we hope in Allah and we hope in His mercy. and we anticipate reward. And I wanted to begin with this to contrast this with pessimism. Right? So on the one hand, I spoke about optimism. And on the other hand, there is pessimism. What is pessimism? Pessimism is you have a negative outlook. You always anticipate the worst outcome. You are always unsure. There's doubt, uncertainty. Over here, right over here, there's certainty, yaqeen. You know you have a Lord. You know you have a purpose in your life. You know that there will be absolute justice. You know there will be accountability. And so therefore, you have hope, and you are optimistic, and you are certain, you have certainty as well. Right? You have certainty in what you believe and what you pursue. On this side here, there is pessimism. Pessimism means doubt, uncertainty, fear, negative outlook. You always have a negative outlook, right? You always think the worst thing is going to happen. And so on this side, this pessimism is what is found with the people of disbelief, in particular the atheists and the materialists, and people, the naturalists, the people who do not believe in purposeful creation, in a meaning to life, in a purpose to life, in wisdom and justice. They don't believe in these things. And so therefore this brings with it pessimism, and tied to that naturally is going to be despair. Right? Despair. Contrast that to what's over this side, right? Optimism. You're optimistic. You anticipate good. You therefore have hope. You have hope. On this side, there is pessimism. Very negative outlook, a very bleak outlook, very dark, very gloomy. Right? Full of uncertainty, full of doubt, full of pessimism, full of despair. And the contrast between these two, I want to read to you. Some statements from some of the people of disbelief, from the atheists, and from the philosophies which they have today. The philosophies, right? The philosophy of nihilism and the philosophy of existentialism, right? These are some of the main philosophies today that drive the people of disbelief, the atheists, the naturalists. I'll explain what these are. What is nihilism? Nihilism means that you reject all moral principles, you reject the notion of religion, you reject that there's any meaning to life, there's any purpose to life, there's nothing of this sort. No morals, no principles, no purpose to life, no meaning to life, right? You have a blank slate. There's nothing, right? This is nihilism, right? Then you have like existentialism, right? Just means that what this basically means is that because there's no purpose, there's no meaning to life, each one of us has to now create his own purpose. Do you understand? He has to create his own purpose in life, which he's then going to pursue. And that purpose is the truth for him. Right? Every person has his own truth. Your truth is your truth. Your truth is your truth. Right? So for example, if I decide my truth is, there's a lot of weak and ignorant people out there, so I'm going to, take their wealth and find ways, and this is my pursuit of happiness. This is the way I'm going to be happy in my life and feel self-fulfilled I'm going to acquire riches by means of violence and, things of that nature. That's my truth. That's my truth. That's the truth and the meaning and the purpose of life as it exists for me. And you can't tell me it's wrong. You can't tell me it's wrong because there's nothing to say it's wrong. Do you understand? And so this existential nihilism, this general philosophy, you can now see what kind of society it produces, what kind of individual it produces, right? And also, as I mentioned, that if you believe there's no meaning to life, there's no purpose to life, there's no objective to life, then you're going to have a very negative, very bleak outlook, a very pessimistic outlook. Which is why this type of way of thinking, it encourages the most evil deeds. It encourages the most, the most evil of traits. It brings out the most evil of characteristics in people. Alright? And I'm going to read to you, like I said, I'm going to read to you some statements here to show you this type of pessimistic attitude that comes with atheism, materialism, nihilism. Right? These people have nothing to live for. Right? There's no meaning. So an example here is, you all know Richard Dawkins, right? This atheist. He said, he's writing a couple of decades ago, and he says, and I'm quoting verbatim here, he says, a foreign publisher of my first book confessed that he could not sleep for 3 nights after reading it. So troubled was he by what he saw as its cold, bleak message. Others have asked me how I can bear to get up in the morning. A teacher from a distant country wrote to me reproachfully that a pupil had come to him in tears after reading the same book, because it had persuaded her that life was empty and purposeless. He advised her not to show the book to any of her friends for fear of contaminating them with the same nihilistic pessimism. Do you understand? Right? So when you read the books of these atheists, and they basically, they are saying that there's no purpose to life is meaningless, there's no real right or wrong, there's nothing really objective to pursue, right? Then you think, obviously, like, when a person reads that type of thing and they wake up in the morning, you think, well, why have I got up this morning? What am I pursuing? What am I doing? Like, the meaning has been taken out of your life, right? Now, okay, so keep this in mind, right? That this is what these types of books they produce, right? When you read the books of these atheists, right? Dawkins, Hitchens, Dennett, and all these, kind of people. Now, I want you to think about something else, because there's an article in the New York Times, and it's titled, "The Happiest Places Post the Highest Suicide Rates." Right? The places which are the happiest, they are posting the highest suicide rates. How does this even make sense? How does it make sense? Right? The places which are posting the highest markers of like being happy and content, these same places are posting the highest suicide rates. How does that make sense? So in this article, 22nd April 2011, and it says here that Tara Parker Pope discussed research on happiness and suicide. The new findings help to explain what has long been a troubling paradox. This is like a mystery and it seems like a contradiction. The happiest places in the world tend to have the highest suicide rates. Numerous studies have shown that places like Denmark and Sweden that consistently score high on measures of happiness and life satisfaction also have relatively high suicide rates. After analyzing the data, the researchers found a relationship between overall happiness and risk of suicide. Right? In general, states with high levels of life satisfaction had higher suicide rates, according to the report, which has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization. I mean, look at this. Everything to them is just economies, They're only interested in satisfaction, suicide, to relate it to economic models and behavior. I mean, it's not even, it's all material. It's all materialistic. Okay, so that's the basic quote. And I want to give you a third quote as well from, you've heard of Christopher Hitchens. This is another very big atheist who died of esophageal cancer in 2011. And basically this man, he's had a few debates, right? He had a debate with a Jewish guy from New York called Shmuley Boteach, or however you pronounce it. And in this debate, when Hitchens is speaking, and he's actually mentioned the same argument a few times in different lectures, right? So basically what he's saying is, he's denying a purpose to life, and he's saying that, look, in 5 billion years' time, the scientists are saying that the Andromeda Galaxy is going to crash with our galaxy. Right? In 5 billion years' time. And because of that, that what have humans got to live for then? If that galaxy over there is going to crash with this galaxy and we're going to perish and die off anyway. In 5 billion years' time, that is. Right? So can you see this type of pessimism? Pessimism is extreme negativity. Can you see the extent to which these people are taking this extreme pessimism? It's like, when you go home tonight, please, I want you to hide under the cover and, be scared that in 5 billion years' time, the Andromeda Galaxy is going to crash with, just be scared. And that's how these people are actually speaking, right? He's brought this up in a debate, not once, because I've listened to it a couple of times, a number of times. So, this is like the extreme destructive pessimism that these people of disbelief, that they believe in, and which, their belief system, it follows that this is the way you have to think. If there's no meaning to your life, if there's no creation first of all, there's no meaning, there's no purpose, there's no wisdom, there's no resurrection, there's no accountability, there's no justice, which you can place your, the justice of Allah Azza wa Jal, in which that you will not be wronged an atom's weight, there will be justice, right? If you don't have those beliefs, you will not have any hope, you will not have optimism. And if there is any happiness and satisfaction, it's all on the surface, like you've just read, right? The happiest places on earth are the ones with the most suicide. And obviously, that when they are measuring happiness, what do they really mean happiness? They don't mean happiness of the heart, satisfaction of the heart. What they mean is, you've got plenty of wealth, you're not living in poverty, you've got the outward kind of, luxuries and things like that you can enjoy. It's all like materialistic. And that, as we know, is not true happiness. Right? So clearly what's happening with these people is that as they're going through life and they are eating and drinking and sleeping and, fulfilling their desires in so many different ways. And, over time it gradually dawns on them that, hang on, if there's only matter and there's no meaning or purpose to anything, what really am I doing? Once they get sick of like the drinking and the pleasure and they realize that this is not really pleasure, it's kind of almost like punishment. Once you just engross yourself in it, it no longer becomes like pleasure and fun, it becomes like toil, right? And then as they start going through life and they start realizing, what's going on here? Like there's no meaning to my life. And then slowly the end conclusions, the true realities of these philosophies, it kind of strikes them, which is that my life is as meaningful as, I've given this example before. Like, you might as well say that you have as much meaning in the universe as the feces of a dog. In the scheme of the universe and matter and materialism, and what's the difference between you and that? There isn't. There's no. If you weren't there, it wouldn't make any difference to the universe. And if the feces of the dog wasn't there, it wouldn't make any difference to the universe. So it clicks, hang on, that my life is as meaningless or as valuable as the feces of a dog. What am I living for? What am I getting up for? And then it clicks to them, and then they realize, and that's what they do. These people in Denmark, Sweden, Japan, in most of the atheistic societies, they just commit suicide, Right? So this is the difference between optimism, hope, right, which comes with creation, purposeful, meaningful, wisdom, absolute justice. And on this side, it's random, undirected matter, meaningless, purposeless, just pessimism, fear, lack of certainty, pessimism, despair, right? And you've seen, the extent to which these people are willing to take, it's ridiculous, the extent to which they basically take all of that. Anyway, so I wanted to mention that because, when we say here, the chapter that we are discussing, Al-Hath ala Ightinam al-A'mal wal-Awqat fi al-A'mal al-Fadila, this is about encouragement. We are encouraging ourselves to make use of one's time in pursuing righteous deeds, because there are deeds which are rectifying and beneficial, and because we have something to look forward to. As Allah says in the Quran, وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ, that you hope in Allah that which they do not hope. So we have a hope in Allah that the people of disbelief, the people of shirk, that they do not have that hope in Allah. We have a hope in Allah, which is why, like I said, that the most resilient, the most happy, the most satisfied of people are Muslims. They are the Muslims, and they are particularly the people of Tawheed amongst them. Right? So I wanted to begin with that introduction, so that we can understand that, this thing that we are pursuing, we have hope in Allah, we are optimistic, we know there's going to be justice, we know there's going to be reward, and all of these things give meaning to this life. Right? So the Shaykh begins, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, by mentioning the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullah, وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah. Fear Allah, have taqwa of Allah. And let each soul look at what it has sent forth for tomorrow. And fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is well informed of that which you do. Surah Al-Hashr, Surah 57, verse 18. And likewise, so obviously this is clearly an encouragement to prepare for tomorrow. And let each one of us look at what has He sent forward of righteous deeds, of ikhlas, of iman, ikhlas, righteous deeds, in all the various types and forms. And likewise, Allah the Exalted, He said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la tulhikum amwalukum wala awladukum an dhikrillah. O you who believe, do not let your wealth and nor your offspring to divert you from the remembrance of Allah. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. And the one who does that, then they are from the losers. وَأَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَأْتِيَ أَحَدُكُمُ الْمَوْتِ فيقول ربي لولا أخرتني إلى أجل قريب فأصدق وأكن من الصالحين. And spend from that which we have provided you before there comes to one of you death. Before death comes to one of you. And he says, Oh my Lord, if only you can delay me, if only you can give me some respite, for an appointed time, so that I can give charity, and that I will be from the righteous people. Right? So this is what a person will say at the point of death. وَلَنْ يُؤَخِّرَ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِذَا جَاءَ أَجَلُهَا وَاللَّهُ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah will never delay a soul when its appointed time comes. And Allah is well informed of that which you do. This is Surah Al-Munafiqun, chapter 63, verses 9 to 11. So as you can clearly see from these verses, the Shaykh has brought these verses. Within them is a strong encouragement and an admonition for a person to look to tomorrow and to see what has he prepared, what has he acquired of righteous, beneficial deeds, and to be on guard, not to be diverted neither by wealth, by possessions, nor by his offspring, being preoccupied with his offspring. And, to spend out of the wealth Allah has given him in charity, upon the poor, upon the needy, and so on and so forth, before death comes to him. Because at the point of death, it will be the wish of a person, if only Allah gave me, an extra week, an extra month, an extra year, an extra, period of youth. He will ask for that. He will feel like that. So that he can then go back and give the charity he did not give, and do the righteous deeds he did not do, so that he can become, وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. I can now become among the righteous. But Allah will never ever delay a soul the point from the point of its appointed time. And Allah is all informed of that which you do. So after mentioning these two verses, the Shaykh says, O Muslims, it is related from Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu that he said, إِذَا سَمِعْتَ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَقُولُ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَارْعِهَا سَمْعَكَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ يَأْمُرُ بِهِ أَوْ شَرٌ يَنْهَى عَنْهُ. Ibn Mas'ud said, when you hear Allah the Exalted say, meaning in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, when you hear these words, O you who believe, when you hear these words, then, focus your attention, because it is either going to be some goodness that Allah is going to command you with, or it is going to be an evil that He is going to prohibit from. Right? So this is Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. And this is evidence that Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu is among those companions, among the many companions, who they learnt the Quran from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? They learnt the Quran from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they learnt knowledge, they learnt the meaning, the ma'na of its verses, and they learnt acting upon it. They learnt both things. What is the meaning and what is the action required from it? And similar to this meaning is what has come from the Tabi'i Abu Abdurrahman As-Sullami. Abu Abdurrahman As-Sullami rahimahullah. He said, حدثنا حدثنا من كان يقرئنا من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنهم كانوا يقترؤون من رسول الله 10 آيات فلا يأخذون في العشر الأخرى حتى يعلموا ما في هذه من العلم والعمل. قالوا فعلمنا العلم والعمل. So this Tabi'i, Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, he said that we met with many of the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu, and they used to relate to us that they used to listen or hear or take from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu 10 verses of the Quran. 10 verses of the Quran. And they would not take another 10 verses until they had learnt what is in this set of 10 verses of knowledge and action. What is in these verses of things that we need to know, things that we need to believe in, and what is in these verses that require action from us? What is that action? And they said, in this manner, فَعَلِمْنَا الْعِلْمَ وَالْعَمَلِ. So thus did we acquire knowledge and did we learn action. Right? So this is the way of the companions radiallahu anhum. They take the Quran piecemeal, bit by bit, 10 verses at a time, not moving on until you've learnt what is the meaning here, what is the knowledge here, what are the rulings, if there is any rulings, what are the things that we need to believe in, if there is anything of belief in relation to the unseen, to Allah, and so on and so forth, and what is any action that we need to act upon. So the Shaykh continues and he says that Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, he spoke the truth, because the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, whenever you hear this word in the Quran, then you have to, this is a call from Allah. This is Allah calling you, because you are from those who believe. It's directed to you. So therefore you have to give your attention and listen. And the Shaykh says that a person will find that whenever he listens to these verses, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, he will find either a command, al-amr bil khair ala umumihi, it will be a command to goodness, like in a general sense, such as preserving the obligations, or doing that which is kind of recommended, or like a nafal, or it will be a prohibition from evil in a general sense, from whatever Allah made haram, unlawful, prohibited. And obviously the greatest of that is shirk with Allah, and then all of the various other sins and acts of disobedience, right? So what the Quran is calling us to is to deeds which are righteous and beneficial, and deeds and prohibiting us from deeds which are harmful and corruption, right? And so this, before we go any further, this now leads me to another point, really an important point, which ties into the previous introduction to do with, meaning, purpose, wisdom, in creation, optimism, hope. And on the other side, you have pessimism, despair, right? Which is to do with, since we are speaking about actions and deeds and righteous deeds and evil deeds, then what we should know is that deeds have qualities and attributes, right? Deeds have qualities and attributes. What is the proof of this? I'm going to give you one or two proofs in the Quran that deeds have properties and attributes. What do we mean by this? Like I can say to you that, this paper has, it's soft and malleable, right? It's a property of the paper. Wood has the property of, being hard, right? Water has the property of quenching thirst, right? Fire has the property of burning. Ice has the property of being cool. Everything we know physically, right? Things have properties, but do deeds have properties? Can actions have properties? Yes or no? Yes. Right? What's the evidence for this? I'll give you two evidences from the Quran. The first of them is would be Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba. Indeed, Allah commands with justice. Commands with justice. And al-ihsan. Al-ihsan is benevolence or excellent benevolence. Wa ita'i dhil qurba. And to give in charity, to the one who is like a near relative. Right. So here Allah commands al-adl. That means that there has to be something which is justice. It has to exist first before Allah commands it. Right? Which means that there are actions which entail justice. And there are actions which entail al-ihsan, benevolence. So it's very clear. And then he said, وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغِي. And he prohibits from al-fahsha, evil, shameful deeds. And al-munkar, which is evil deeds. And al-baghi, which is oppression. Right? So these things had to exist first before they are commanded and prohibited. Which means that deeds have properties and qualities, right? Such and such a deed is justice. Such and such a deed is injustice, right? So very, very clear. And another verse as a proof is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. There are four things here. Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, He commands them with al-ma'ruf. Al-ma'ruf. Ma'ruf is that which is good. Which means that there has to be already something which is ma'ruf, which is good, in the actions and behaviors for Allah to command it. Right? وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, which means that there has to be something which is munkar. It has the quality of being munkar, evil, before Allah prohibits it. And then He makes lawful for them that which is tayyib. So something already has to have the quality of being tayyib before it is made lawful. And He makes unlawful for them the khaba'ith. There has to be something which has the quality of being khabith before Allah prohibits it. Right? Right? Now some of these things we can know by way of the fitrah and by way of the instinct. Right? Some of these things are already known to the human self, to the intellect, to the fitrah. And that's because Allah Azza wa Jal has put within the soul, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. In the soul, Allah has put something in there by which it can instinctively recognize that something is right or wrong. Right? I'll give you a few examples. This applies irrespective of whether you are an atheist, a Jew, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, it doesn't matter. Because every soul has been given this fitrah and this kind of, this inward sense of what is right and wrong, right? So imagine that, imagine there's a well and, there's a guy, he's, taken, put his bucket down and he's taken the well and he's filling it up and he's taken, 30 minutes to get water now. And he's going to take it back to his village or his family. And then another guy comes along and he sees what he's done, so he gives him a slap this way and a slap that way and takes his bucket and then off he goes. If you're looking at this situation here, no matter what you are, you could be a Jew, Christian, whatever, you know instinctively this is wrong. This is injustice. This is theft. And this is, is injustice. You know this is wrong. Right? This is because of the fitrah and the instinctive, there's a certain level of morality that is common and shared by which everybody knows that certain things are wrong and certain things are right and praiseworthy, right? You know that speaking the truth is righteous and praiseworthy. You know that telling lies is wrong and blameworthy, right? You know that adl, justice, to be just, is praiseworthy and correct. And you know that oppression is blameworthy and wrong, right? There are many, many things that we know instinctively, right, that are either right or wrong, or beneficial or harmful. So, coming back to the point then, the point being here, that in whatever Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded and prohibited, and whatever He has made halal and haram, we know that there is like benefit, and there is wholesomeness, and there is purity on one side, and there is harm and evil and corruption on the other side. Right? There's nothing that the Sharia has come with in which it commands and which it prohibits, except that there is promotion of benefit and rectification on the one side, and the prohibition of corruption and evil and harm on the other side. Right? And in some cases that we... So as we said, that deeds have properties, right? There are sifat which are attached to deeds, right? And they have effects. So stealing has something associated with it, and fornication has something associated with it, and dhulm has something associated with it, right? And it is prohibited for the attributes that it has. And likewise, all the righteous deeds, giving charity and being truthful and establishing justice, and all of these deeds, there are attributes which are attached to these deeds. So the Sharia, what the Messenger of Allah, what he came with to command those things which are wajib and mustahab, which bring about that which is of benefit, right? Which rectify the society. And conversely, he prohibited those things which are corruption and harm and, whatever is like that. So, like I said to you before, tying in the same thing that we said before, as believers, we are people of Iman, and Allah Azza wa Jal has created this creation for a purpose. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And, so we are guided, and we know what to expect, and we know what the purpose in life is, And we know that by way of this guidance, by way of the guidance in what is halal and haram, and what is commanded and what is prohibited, that we are able to attain safety and felicity in this life and likewise in the hereafter, right? Our desires and our whims, because Allah Azza wa Jal has put within us certain, certain qualities, which if they are not regulated, then they will lead to corruption and evil, right? And there's three basic qualities. The first is the power of the intellect. The second is the power of the carnal desire, the sexual desire, and the third is the anger and discontent, right? This is what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah says. He mentions the verse in the Quran, وَلَا يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ وَلَا يَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا يَزْنُونَ. In this verse, Allah Azza wa Jalla describes three qualities of the believers. First of all, they do not commit shirk with Allah. Secondly, they do not kill a soul without due right. And thirdly, they do not commit illegal sexual intercourse, right? There are three things here. The intellect, the soundness and the power of the intellect, the power of anger, the feeling of anger, and the power of the carnal or sexual desire, right? In these three things, corruption can occur. So if you do not have the law, the Sharia, the guidance from Allah, by which, by way of what Allah commanded, by way of what He prohibited, then you will not remain in check. You will not remain within the confines of what is beneficial and rectifying, right? And obviously, because we believe in Allah, we believe in the last day, we believe in accountability, and we, all of those things, this is why we worship only Allah, and we do not transgress against the soul, the extreme limit of which is to kill a soul without due right, and nor do we commit or fall into illegal sexual intercourse, because these are when these affairs when you transgress, and they go beyond the limits. So the reason why I mentioned this, I'm trying to tie all of this in together, inshallah, is that if you remember earlier that we mentioned about these atheists and these nihilists and existentialists, when you look at these people and you look at their main figureheads, their leaders, their philosophers, the ones who are writing the books, the ones who are propounding the ideas, and you look into their personal lives, you will see that they are the most vile, generally the most vile, the most corruptive, the most exploitative people that you ever know, right? Jean-Paul Sartre, a serial pedophile, engaged, in basically exploiting girls, right? Albert Camus, likewise, another filthy individual, right? And you start looking at these people, and because if you've got nothing to live for, and there's no meaning, and there's no purpose in life, and you've got to create your own meaning, then that's what these philosophers do. They just create their own meaning to life, and they think, yes, life is just all about pleasure and this and exploiting people. It doesn't matter, if you exploit these kids, whatever. It's a learning lesson for them, and they'll be better in life for it. Do you understand? Right? So the point being that these people, when they have this pessimistic, negative, bleak outlook in life, then it means you have to go and you have to create your own purpose. And you have to create your own truth. And this means that you will then transgress in the intellect. In intellect, sound intellect is tawheed, right? Creation has a purpose. There is meaning and wisdom. There's intentionality in what we see. There's a creator behind it. And we ought to worship him and be grateful for the bounties and favors. This is sound intellect. And corrupt intellect is all of this like materialism, evolution, Darwinism, all this. This is a corruption of the intellect, right? It's a deviation from the intellect. Because it's a misuse of the intellect, right? That's the first thing. And then you go beyond, you transgress in terms of like controlling your anger. So there you have murder, right? You know, that's why you see in generally atheistic societies and atheistic, like, you know, because they don't value life, you will see the greatest mass murder, like in history, like you see in Russian communism and Chinese communism, and generally in those societies, you tend to see this type of mass slaughter of people because there's no meaning or value to life, right? So they will then transgress this second kind of quality which is in humans of the anger. And then likewise, carnal desire, sexual desire, you will see them transgress in that as well. That's why you see all of these kind of secular, liberal societies like you see in France and you see in all these other places, like the Scandinavian countries, you know, you see promotion of all of this, you know, filth and extramarital relations and fornication and every type of filth and transgression you can think of, right? When you know, you do not have guidance and you do not have meaning and purpose in life. So coming all the way back, Allah Azza wa Jal, when He says Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, or you who believe, it is either a command that we are being given of something that is good, beneficial, wholesome, rectifying to you, to your heart, to your soul, to your family, to the society, or it is going to be a prohibition of something that is evil, corrupt, harmful, right? That's going to be harmful for you. So this is why the believer, he listens very, very carefully when he hears these, you know, whenever he hears these words. And so the Shaykh continues and he says that when Allah addresses you, or people of Iman, you know, from the believing men and the believing women, there is a wisdom behind this. There's a wisdom in this for you. And this wisdom requires that a believing man or woman, he is very, very quick in responding to Allah and His Messenger. You respond very, very quickly to Allah and His Messenger. And you respond very quickly in believing the reports. And this will then bring you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. You know, He's describing the attitude and the quality of a believer. This is how it is. Right? That you respond sincerely and quickly, and you do what He commanded, you keep away from what He prohibited. And this is very different to the people of hypocrisy, the munafiqun, because even though outwardly they might do the same things that we do, they might pray, they might fast, they might respond to the Quran in different ways, but inwardly it's disbelief. Right? The only reason why they are believing is because they want to protect their worldly interests, which they would otherwise lose. So they're just making this dissimulation and display of Iman outwardly, whereas inwardly they are concealing disbelief. But they do the same things that we do outwardly. Whereas the believer is doing them sincerely, seeking the pleasure and the reward from Allah. And he also knows that these things which he's being told to do and commanded to do, that they are actually beneficial. There's something beneficial behind them, right? So in other words, we don't believe that we're just blindly doing actions and it's only obedience that counts. Do you understand? This is one of the false understandings that often the people of disbelief and the atheist materialists they have, that it's just blind obedience, you're just doing these ritual actions and there's no meaning behind it, and it's just, no. Like we said before, every action has attributes. Actions have qualities. That's why they are commanded and prohibited. It is because something is ma'roof, good, why Allah commanded it. It already has the quality of being ma'roof, right? It's why Allah has prohibited something, from the things He prohibited, because there's something inherently harmful in that thing, like the flesh of the pig, for example, or like alcohol, for example, because it befogs the mind and it leads to harm and destruction in society, right? So the commands and prohibitions are not just a command and a prohibition in and of itself. Rather, it is tied to things which have actual properties and qualities associated with them, right? Whether they are physical things like alcohol, the flesh of a pig, or whether it is actions or deeds that we do, like stealing or sexual relations outside of marriage, and so on and so forth, right? These things, they have qualities attached to them, and they have an impact on society, upon the individual, upon the society, and that's why they are either commanded or they are prohibited, right? So all of it, there is truth, and there is justice, and there is wisdom in all of this. It's not like what the kuffar and the mulhideen, what they say, is just blind following and, you just ritual obedience. There's no, of course not. There's no such thing. And what more evidence do you need? What more evidence do you need than, the fact that in your societies you have all this suicide, and you have, like we discussed earlier on, you're sick of life, obviously. You're happy about something, but clearly it can't be true happiness, because otherwise you wouldn't be taking your life, like what we read earlier on from that news report. And likewise, those who are the most charitable, basically tend to be the Muslims, most charitable in giving charity. Those who are the most resilient in calamity, obviously they are the Muslims. Those who have who maintain their, they don't lose their mind. Their mind is not befogged. The largest number of collective people are Muslims, right? Chinese are drinking, all of these other nations are drinking and, driving on the roads, killing people or beating their wives, in a drunken state, or, Liverpool lost the match, and they come home and just bash the wife, just kill you, this is what you see in these societies. We don't have that among the Muslims. Right? That means that what the Sharia is commanding us and prohibiting us, it has fruits. It has benefits. So it can't obviously just be, you're just blindly following the command, there's no meaning behind it. No, of course not. Evidence shows otherwise, right? The reality shows otherwise. So this is why we are mentioning all of these things and tying them together, is to show that we as people of Iman, when we listen to Allah and His call in the Quran, we know it's going to be either a command that He's going to give us, which is going to be beneficial, or it's going to be a prohibition, which we know is something that's going to be harmful. Right? And it's from sound reason, sound intellect, that you rush and you hasten to follow and to comply those, to those things. And then we'll round this up, inshallah ta'ala. The Shaykh mentions that the two verses that we mentioned at the beginning, the two verses, right? O you who believe, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullah wal tanzur nafsun ma qaddamat lighad. Those verses that we mentioned, he says there are a number of two benefits that we can take from these verses. The first is an encouragement in preparing for the final day. And this encouragement, what does it mean? It means that you have to strive and make jihad against your own soul. You make jihad against your own soul in trying to do every act of obedience and abandoning every act of disobedience, right? So see how the believer, the way we look at things is that we have an optimistic outlook. We are looking for the final day. We are trying to accrue good deeds. These deeds are beneficial, rectifying deeds. And we see this as an issue of fighting against the soul, fighting against its whims. Why? Because within the soul, there is a tendency towards evil. There's a tendency to deviate from sound reason. There's a tendency to be overtaken by anger. There's a tendency to be overtaken by one's impulses and carnal desires. We know this is the nature, right? So we see it as a matter of fighting against the soul, in obedience to Allah and leaving what is, this is how we view things, right? Because we are preparing for the hereafter. And this is very different to, like I said, to the atheists, nihilists, existentialists. Why? Because to them, the only truth is what you make to be the truth. You understand? So for example, if you are someone like Jean-Paul Sartre and you think, well, my truth in life is going to be exploiting young girls for, sexual pleasure or whatever, and that's what I'm going to pursue, and that's my philosophy, and that's what you're going to see. And if you are someone who basically wants power at any cost, and you're willing to kill thousands or millions of people, well, that's what you're going to pursue. That's what you're going to pursue. It's not a matter of fighting against your soul. You're not going to fight against your soul. You're going to go with where your soul is going to take you. Right? And, and so on and so forth. So the believer, it is a matter of fighting against the soul. And for these other people, it is a matter of following the whims of the soul. Different. Right? And that's because they have pessimism, a bleak outlook, like we mentioned before. So the Shaykh then continues and he says, the greatest preparation a person can make for meeting Allah is tahqiq al-tawheed. It is to actualize tawheed. Right? It is to worship Allah with sincerity, to follow and imitate His Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And, this means that a person has to acquire knowledge and abide by the commands and the prohibitions. Right, so this is the first thing that we take from these verses. The second thing that we take from these verses is clearly these verses indicate that you must use your time wisely and you must benefit from whatever time you have in whatever is going to bring benefit to you. Right? You have a limited lifespan. It's a few short decades, and that's it. You're going to reach into old age. And, you have very limited time in which to acquire good deeds because, in life you are pursuing livelihood, you are raising children, you are pursuing education, you are pursuing work, there's all sorts of things you're doing. And within that is when you have the chance and the opportunity to acquire good deeds. So these verses, they are an admonition to use your time wisely, to use your time for benefit. And that's why in the verses, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu ttaqullah wal tanzur nafsun ma qaddamat lighad. Let each soul look at what it has prepared for tomorrow. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تلهكم أموالكم ولا أولادكم عن ذكر الله. O you who believe, do not let your wealth and your offspring divert you from the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. So, a believer, the Shaykh says, فَمَا مِن مُسْلِمٍ وَلَا مُسْلِمَةٍ كَانَ كَيِّسًا فَطَنًا عَاقِلًا مُدْرِكًا إِلَّا وَهُوَ يُظْهِرُ لَهُ ذَلِكَ. That there is no Muslim man or woman who is intelligent, astute, smart, perceptive, except that إِلَّا وَهُوَ يَظْهَرُ لَهُ ذَلِكَ, except that this becomes apparent to him. This is apparent to everybody, right? That you have to use your time wisely to acquire good deeds and not to be diverted by neither wealth nor your children nor any other kinds of preoccupations. So what we'll do, we've come halfway into the lecture, inshallah. What we'll do is we'll stop at this point and then we'll continue and finish off the rest of the lecture, inshallah ta'ala. The Shaykh mentioned some ahadith in this regard, so we'll go through them in the next lecture, inshallah. Just to summarize then, the lecture is about using your time wisely to acquire good deeds, beneficial deeds. And we as people of belief, people of Iman, we believe in Allah, we believe in the last day, we believe in accountability, we believe that there's a meaning and purpose to this life, and there's wisdom and there's purpose, and because of that, we as believers, we have something to look forward to, right? We hope in Allah, and we believe in the last day, and we know there is going to be justice. And so therefore, in this life, we gladly and with pleasure and joy, we seek to do righteous deeds. We get pleasure out of giving charity. We get pleasure out of establishing the prayer. We get pleasure out of enjoining the good and prohibiting the evil. We get pleasure and satisfaction out of doing dhikr, remembering Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? This is the true satisfaction of the heart. As opposed to the people of disbelief, materialism and atheism, you've already read and seen, you've seen already how the most happy societies, apparently happy, they have the most suicide rates. Denmark, Sweden, places like that. Because they measure happiness just with material benefits and material pleasures. This is happiness to them. And that's why, they say it's a paradox. How can we explain these people are so happy, great jobs, they're affluent and they have pleasures and whatever, yet they're committing suicide. It's because they don't know what true happiness really is. Right? True happiness is with the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah. Right? Ala bi dhikrillah tatma'innul qulub. Verily by the remembrance of Allah do the hearts find satisfaction. So those people, they have nothing to look forward to. It's all pessimism, it's bleak, it's dark, it's black, it's gloomy. There's no meaning to your life. There's no purpose behind your actions. Why are you doing what you're doing? Well, if ultimately what's going to happen is that this galaxy is going to perish and, as they say. Right? So alhamdulillah, we listen to these ayat and we are encouraged by these ayat, and we know that in doing good deeds and pursuing good deeds, this is how we live like we said in the previous lessons, al-hayatu tayyibah. This is the goodly life. This is the life, the true life that gives you true life, true happiness, true satisfaction. So inshallah we'll continue in the next lesson with the rest of the texts mentioned by the Shaykh. With that we'll conclude today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.